So the question is,
All right.
so the question is, what is the distillation of the astral, and what is the purpose of that?
Okay. So the Zeta said in a sitting the other day that they had finally achieved a point where they were able to create a distilled process, which was uh, between the astral and spirit realm. So if you, let's say we're in three-dimensional space, astral's four dimensions, spirit realm's fifth, in between the fourth and fifth, there is a layer of distillation. Now, when the Zetas first started their own process of building a consensus reality, a lot of them got together and spent many, many years, if not generations, building a distillation so that ultimately they could move from their physical forms into this new consensus reality, or this collective consciousness of the race, and ultimately known as the hive mind. I guess from the Zeta's perspective, because of what's happening on the timeline and the fact that humanity is actually moving forward quite quickly at this point, especially with the implementation of the AI and probably a whole lot of technologies, that ultimately over the many, many years that they've been holding the astral, that they've, like they've been sitting outside of the whole humanistic experience and holding the astral, and it's taken, many, many of them to do it. And as I said, I've been there before. I've seen them doing it as well. And as they held this consciousness, ultimately it was able to be, and we're using the word the distillation because that's the word they used, but they distilled this astral consciousness into a complete form, because it has to be able to hold itself outside of other beings' thoughts. So this is actually a creation or a distillation of the astral, but at its finest point. And this then means that it's being created for humans from the fabric of consciousness of humans.
So is this an alternative to something like the gateway process?
No, the gateway still exists. So the gateway was designed by the Zetas so that people could, firstly, if a person was a spirit person and they wanted to join a race, they could, through decision making and intention, move to the gateway and move to one of the 9 races. All right. But of course, they would be, when doing that, placed in a temporary holding area for the person to be educated in the protocols and procedures of the race. That's the first thing. The second one was where the person was a hybrid and they had a symbiotic relationship with spirit people, and the hybrid wanted to bring with them back to the race components of their human experience, their experiential process. And so they couldn't normally do that. Normally there'd be a separation. That's back to spirit realm, that's back to the extraterrestrial race, and never the two shall meet. And all this is, in regards to this experience, is just a memory of a incarnation as a human.
Mm-hmm.
But the Zetas recognize that some people, and other races as well, that some beings were losing that organic experience of being part of a race. And so, of course, those people, or those hybrids, would need to use the gateway as well and be held in that temporary process, so that ultimately the higher self could properly implement, properly bring to themselves the experiential learning processes, but without any of the damage that can be caused. Because think about it, if you're bringing into a race things of a human nature, the potential there is that you could color the waters of the experience of the race. And so it needs to be that the extraterrestrial that returns back to their original race, bringing with them those experiential learning processes, is able to hold that correctly within their own consciousness, so that it doesn't reflect in any way and I'm not going to say negative, but in a lower frequency or a dissonance in that race's consciousness.
So what do you think the practical effect of this new distillation would be? Like what does it mean to an incarnate human or to a spirit?
Um, I would suggest that people who have a level of awareness, people that can correctly heterodyne, will be able to enter into a space that is similar to spirit realm, but it's based purely in human consciousness. And this space means that people will be able to populate that with their own essence. So a person, rather than terminating and going to spirit realm, could terminate and go to the distilled space. So it's basically
And
a new spirit realm, but without all of the baggage related to spirit realm, i.e., when you return to spirit realm, you'll remember a lot of the stuff that you've done here. But as the years progress, if there's such thing as time, a lot of spirits start to forget their existences here. The opposite applies, that when they come from spirit realm into the three-dimensional space, that generally people don't remember their full experience or previous incarnations. But the distillation would mean that a person would have full cognizance of each of those journeys in and out.
will spirits be able to enter it? So from the other side, let's say, so like there could be better
Absolutely.
communication. So now incarnated humans and spirits could communicate more effectively.
Yeah, because it's a space of joining.
Mm-hmm.
Now, spirits don't go into the astral, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't go in from spirit realm down to the astral. But if you pass over and you want to stay associated with a physical being, such as a partner, you will very much be in the astral. So the process there is that you've got to enter that process from the three-dimensional space, rather than going from a fifth-dimensional space down to a fourth. Spirit people often just bypass and then associate with a medium through consciousness. And some people would say even telepathic communication. They call that mental mediumship.
So then this could be it's similar to the way the Zetas form their collective consciousness. This could be the beginning of a new process for not reincarnating in a different way, let's say. So you can move in and out of a physical incarnation,
Yes,
without all the forgetting.
yes.
Maybe you don't have to go into a baby, let's say. Maybe, eventually, let's say we have the physical technology to mature,
Yeah.
containers. You can just move in and out just like the Zetas do.
There's a lot of discussion around at the moment about the splitting of the timelines as well. I'm not sure if people have incorrectly assigned the splitting of the timelines to this distillation process that's been announced by the Zetas 2 days ago. But it's definitely something that was always going to happen, because the Zetas have said for many years, many years, that there would be a split in the human race in regards to technological and also consciousness. So we've all seen the exponential increase of technology and the AI and the sensor-driven technologies and the IoT and just all of this stuff, the neural links. And of course, I was sitting here going, well, what's happening over this side? Because we've got everything exponentially increasing technologically, but what's going on from a consciousness perspective? Then, of course, they've announced the distillation. So now, of course, we've got this balancing that's taking place between the two streams of humanity.
But it'll still be difficult, at least initially, for people to reach this distillation while incarnated, right? I mean, you still have to, learn how to do it and, be able to achieve the right frame of mind.
Yeah, but I think the thing is that once you know that something exists, then it's like a seed, isn't it? That can grow. It's like a seed that grows into a tree. I mean, people know about the astral. Many people can get into the astral consciously. A lot of people go to the astral at night when they're asleep. And so the point is that if in transition you are moving through a distillation, which is a layer between the fourth and fifth space, it's a choice that you've got that you would make, whether you would enter into spirit realm or not, or whether you would move into a distillation. Because for me, if the distillation is pretty close to the same frequency as spirit realm, and you know that ultimately you'll be able to reincarnate in and out of the three-dimensional space and not forget anything, I think that this is an absolute benefit to humanity, because ultimately the problems that humanity has had has been the fact that they've forgotten their gains that they've made in this, in a sense of spirituality, while they've been in this three-dimensional space. They've moved from here into spirit realm, remembered, and then when they've reincarnated, they've forgot. And so people,
Do you think the forgetting from the distillation layer to physical incarnation will be lessened?
oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Hmm. So then you could see a split. I mean, so over time you could see spirit realm depopulate to a large degree, right? Because after a while, like if it no longer serves a purpose, and this is what they've always been saying,
Yeah.
it's a technology you've outgrown, right? Eventually, people stop going to the spirit. Now everyone goes to distillation, or a lot of us, and then you just go in and out of the physical when you want, to a degree.
I think it's great. I think spirit realm needs to be emptied. And
Did the Zetas ever have a spirit realm? Is this exactly the process they went through? Did they have a spirit realm as well? And then when they created the collective consciousness, they no longer needed it?
they had something similar to spirit realm. That was the technology, the same as the Anunnaki created the spirit realm for the consciousness for the human race. I don't think, from my understanding, that spirit realm was ever designed to create a process of permanent incremental transition consciously for spirit people, because ultimately every single time somebody incarnates into the physical form, they forget a lot or everything, and that's the problem. And so that's been the problem with the technology, that you move from spirit realm into the human frequency and the forgetting takes place.
Mm-hmm.
With the distillation, it won't happen. So you're
Yeah, so
going
spirit realm was always meant to be a temporary,
holding
stepping stone.
area. Yeah. The other thing is, I think that over the next couple of years, you're going to see an absolute increase in children remembering their previous lives.
Do you think it's because it'll be children that chose to go to or people that when they passed over, they went to distillation and they came back?
And then they just came back. Because
Mm.
we don't know how long it normally takes for someone to, and I'm going to use the word recycle, but to recycle through spirit realm and back. But with the distillation, it could be just drop in and drop back.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Zetas at one point in the interviews, they said that one of the goals of let's say advancing is the ability to hold your individuated form without needing a physical body,
There you go.
which I think is what they refer to going into in and out of the collective consciousness at
Yeah.
will, but they still maintain their individuality, but then they come back to the physical for whatever reason, do what they need to do, go back. And they don't lose as much, which obviously you could see how useful that'd be for the race, and then you start to advance very rapidly.
Well, I think you'll see that a lot of races that view humanity and that are not disclosed, and there is no disclosure once again from extraterrestrial races and interdimensionals back to humans, as Grush and others have said. It's like the sun casting, they're using photons to cast a shadow onto something via a physical form. In the end, ultimately, you can't interact with that shadow in any real way, but you can see it. And so it would be the same as, these beings. We can see the distortions, we can see the phenomenon, but there's no real interaction with it. And maybe that's also what the distillation is about as well, is that ultimately, through the fact that there'll be no real forgetting from the distillation, it may be that you'll keep with you your gained spiritual and cognitive and conscious abilities. And if
Mm-hmm.
you've learned to heterodyne in this physical 3D space, and then you transition, and then you come back, and you come back with those same abilities as a child, your ability to interreact with or interrelate to these other races is significantly improved and increased.
Mm-hmm.
This
Interesting.
is what the Zetas have said all along, that ultimately there would be a splitting at some point between the races. Now, we're not saying the split's taking place now, but we are seeing an exponential increase in energy and consciousness people's cognitive ability to understand that what spirituality or spiritual nature is, what is their core self, their core nature. And so it's really important that people start to understand that they have choice now. They have a choice between whether they embed themselves with technology or abide by full technologies. That doesn't mean you can't abide by any technology. That's not going to happen. But it's more about that there's a much more of a choice.
Are the Zetas the only ones holding the space around the astral? Or are there other races helping with that as well?
I've only seen the Zetas doing that, but that doesn't mean that just because you've not seen them, that the other races weren't involved. Because the council, and I know that supposedly everyone's got contact with the council. I actually don't have contact with the council, but from previous interactions with entities that have talked to us who do have access to the council, they have an agreement between multiple races as to what does and doesn't take place.
So then you could see on the more negative side, races trying to get humans to use certain technology, which might interfere with that access to the distillation layer, or um, get you to use that as an alternative. Like, no, don't worry about the distillation. Don't worry about that. Just plug into this. It's better, et cetera, et cetera. And that'll be the split that happens. And then some people will just say, no, I'd rather just, develop, my own mind and my own, frequency, let's say. Yeah.
Remember the crop circle that said beware the deceivers. And if you look at the crop circle, it's got the extraterrestrial head with the whites of the eyes, which is the container of the Orions. And of course, there's the Orion's belt there as well. And so a race has tried to alert humanity of the fact that there will be technologies. And, we know through the area of school phenomenon that they were warned about being technology. I think it's very easy for people to want to take a shortcut. They may want to take a shortcut to what they see as a level of spirituality or connection. That's definitely not the way. There are no shortcuts to this. You have everything that you require within yourself already to reach your potential, your higher self.
What's interesting is whenever people analyze something at the aerial school, they assume that when the warning is given about technology, it's about combustion engines and things like that, right? But it's like that could be. I mean, sure, maybe that's not great, but that's not really the dangerous technology. The dangerous technology is going to be neural link. Who knows what, plugged into your brain. And
I think it actually is well past that stuff. That stuff's just 101 stuff. The real danger is the etheric technologies. Is stuff that, because you've got an etheric body and there's the potential for these other entities, if whatever, to attach implants or energetic processes to a person. And the thing is that they actually need your permission to do it as well. So if you don't give permission, if you don't take the shortcuts, you don't have a problem. It's when you just jump straight into this stuff. Or here's an example, CE5, going outside with a group of people, asking anybody to come to you because you think that they're all going to be for the best and highest good. No, that doesn't happen. And so, yeah, you might be lucky and come across a race that is decent, but the potential to not have that happen is quite high as well.
What's interesting is the races that seem to be more advanced than us in other ways, but they still maintain, a more negative orientation, or, they still, don't mind coming and messing with another race, for example. Like, they never went through something. They don't have their own distillation layer. They don't have their own process where they, they're increasing their own frequency, or, they just made too many bad decisions over time. And
think about
humanity kind of painted themselves into a corner.
Think about humanity and their developmental processes, especially over the many, many years previous to this year, and what the things that humans went through and did to each other. Some races may still be going through things themselves where they aren't correctly aligned with source consciousness. They're not aligned with the ultimate good, if you want to use duality as a method. of understanding things. And so ultimately they maybe see what's going on this planet as a gateway for them to do whatever they want,
Their own shortcut. Right?
their own shortcut.
Well, and definitely then we could see if the human race fractures, we could see that happen with different parts of the race, just like happened with the Zetas, that some parts of the human race take a path that, it's negative, and it's negative in the very long term, and then they get kind of stuck.
It's very possible for sure.
Interesting. Cool. And that was the first time that you ever heard that? I mean, so this is pretty new.
Never heard of the distillation before from them. This was the first time they've ever mentioned it. And interestingly, as you know, when we do the sittings with the Zetas, they normally just let people ask questions. They just started talking about they controlled the conversation because there was information that they wanted to bring through. They've been working on this distillation process, as far as I'm aware, for could be 70 years, if not more.
Mm. So do you think, assuming that there have been earlier attempts at, taking a race like us on this planet and elevating it, or, having it form the collective consciousness, and those attempts have failed, as far as we know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This is kind of like, okay, now they're basically they're figuring out the right way to do this now, and maybe this is like a new technique on their part, let's say.
I've heard other people say that previous civilizations on this earth have failed. I would agree that that's true, and that this may be the first time that a civilization that's on the brink has been given the capacity to move beyond their programming.
What would happen to those previous civilizations? They presumably made some progress in developing a collective consciousness. They did something in the astral. Would that memory still be there in the astral somewhere? Would it still be accessible to us?
It would have to be, yeah. It would have to be there.
Yeah.
It's a mirror image of the physical planet, the astral. So anything that's taken place since the inception of the planet exists in the astral.
So then, I guess you could say, I mean, these previous civilizations were us. I mean, this is just us. This is like our fifth attempt, sixth attempt, let's say. But if we still have access, if it's still in the astral somewhere, I mean, this is still basically part of this consciousness that has been forming over a very long period of time, and we're just the latest version of it, an attempt
That's
at.
right. And think about it. We don't know because we've got no map about what happened in the past, but how quickly has there been an exponential increase in the levels of technologies just in the last few years? Once, and think about it, like I know this sounds a bit funny, but somebody thinks, oh, I'm going to create this, and it's called a clothes peg, and they're on one country, and next thing, 5 or 6 people try to introduce clothes pegs to reality, to society, because ultimately it was part of the fabric of consciousness. Now, this information that exists, it could be bleeding at a much faster rate into the 3-dimensional space, because as there's an acceleration, which is the catalyst for growth, we're moving into these other states.
Interesting. And this distillation layer, does it form naturally by itself, just by virtue of the Zetas holding the astral in the right way, let's say? But it's internal. It's like the cream rises to the top, and the best of humanity naturally creates it, or are they doing something to create it specifically?
I don't have full knowledge of this at all. So straight up, so I would suggest that from what I've seen, that like any distillation process, there was a third-party process to create that.
Yeah, because I just keep thinking about the role of the planet in all of this, because there's definitely another source of consciousness there that is, that all of humanity is an extension of, that must be taking part in this, affecting this, doing something as well. So it's not just the human race and these other races interacting. There's this third entity, which is the planet itself, doing something. Who knows what it's doing?
Well, the third entity is the other races. You see, everyone's correctly, incorrectly assigned the discussion about disclosure to all the technology. And these craft crashed, and we've all got them, and we back engineered them, and we did this and we did that. But the reality is that these beings have actually been trying to create a distillation, because on the timeline they've seen that ultimately there will be the same process where civilization gets into an accelerated cycle as previous civilizations have, but ultimately without a distillation process to move into, there's nowhere to go. You still can only move back into spirit realm, and that's been the failing of that spirit realm technology continually.
Yeah, but what I mean, I guess, is like we have all the races, so the human race and all the other races interacting, but there's also the planet itself, which we know there's something special about it. It has its own consciousness, and it has its own, plan or something that it's doing, right? Because it was a surprise that humans were able to achieve what they did, and that was the planet doing.
Think about how the planet's going to benefit from the distillation immensely. As more and more people recycle from distillation back into three-dimensional space, holding all of the information from their previous lives, we're going to see an exponential increase in care and kindness and compassion for the planet.
Do you think that some of the races, so we know the Zetas have said that they can communicate with the planet, right?
Yes.
I mean, are they basically just helping? I mean, is some of this, we think of the Zetas supporting the human race, but are the Zetas also really taught, basically helping the planet? The planet's like, hey, I've got this problem. These guys just don't advance, or they're stuck. Can you give us a hand?
Yeah, well, the
Something
truth
like
is that the Zetas said they put the planet first.
Yeah.
And not the species. And they said that many years ago. So if the planet's the main priority for the race, then of course they'll do whatever they need to do to support that planet, which I think is a great thing, because ultimately, if your home doesn't exist, then your race doesn't exist.
Yeah, and especially if
and they've learned from their own destruction, haven't they?
Right.
Remember, the Zetas had their own planet destroyed.
Yeah.
So of course, if you had that happen and you were looking at another race and another planet, your top priority would be that the planet comes first.
Especially if the planet it's almost like more fundamental, because other races can come and go, right?
Yeah.
So, but the planet you need to protect. And then if you view the human race as an extension of the planet in a way, then sure, helping one is helping the other. So maybe from the Zeta perspective, the way to help the planet is, okay, let's get this version of the human race to finally behave properly, let's say.
Absolutely. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
it is well, it's positive. It's definitely positive. I mean, there's so much, like you were saying the other day, there's so much crazy stuff happening.
Yeah.
Good to see that someone's looking out for us.
This is probably the most positive thing I've heard in years, so I'm quite happy about it. So I'll be heading towards the distillation in a very quick space, just to have a look around and see what's there.
Yeah, and I wonder, it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy to even think about this, and what that really means, and what that, I don't know, what people will do there.
Yeah. Well, think about it. People, using Monroe techniques, binaural beats, all these things, they've been creating a form of a distillation, but they've called it a collective consciousness. We now have a space, a frequency to move into that is an undesignated frequency. No one knows what specific frequency this thing is, but you'll know it when you get there. And you'll be able to get there, especially even as a human. Even in this physical form, you'll still be able to get there. So this will be the thing that what's been an issue before is that leaving here, say you project yourself in the spirit realm, which you can do, there's a vast distance between the three-dimensional space and the fifth-dimensional space. But of course, the distillation's beneath that fifth-dimensional space. So ultimately, people will be able to move past the astral into the distillation. I know this probably sounds a little bit out there, but you may be able to visit your relatives that have passed over.
Well, and it's almost like you could see it almost like as like a more accessible version of the Nexus, right? Because part of the problem is you go into spirit realm and you're kind of stuck there. So you're going back and forth and back and forth. And
Yeah.
how do you get out of this entire, let's say, zone and go out into the
Cycle.
broader universe, into broader in other dimensions? With the distillation, now maybe it is in a form of, you know, gateway for spirits to start being able to make their way into different types of existence.
Yeah. As I said, watch the space. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. All right.